I'm Morgan, 35 years old, and I've been sitting beside my 12-year-old son Tyler's hospital bed for 72 hours straight. The accident destroyed his bike and left him unconscious in the ICU. My eyes were burning from lack of sleep when my phone rang. It was my mother. Tomorrow is your sister's birthday party. Make sure you help prepare. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I can't. This isn't the time. Her response chilled me to the bone. If you don't come, I'll cut you off. I hung up and deleted her number. Where are you watching from today? Hit like and subscribe to hear what my son said when he finally woke up on the day of that party. Growing up in our pristine suburban home in Connecticut, I learned early that perfection was the only acceptable standard. My mother, Barbara, ruled our household with impossible expectations and conditional love. From the beginning, it was clear that my younger sister Vanessa was the golden child. With her natural talent for piano, straight A report cards, and effortless social grace, she embodied everything my mother valued. I wasn't a bad kid by any measure. I got decent grades, played soccer, and kept out of trouble. But in Barbara's eyes, I was perpetually insufficient. Why can't you be more like your sister? Became the soundtrack of my childhood. If Vanessa brought home an A, my B+ was a disappointment. If she won first place in the talent show, my third-place soccer tournament trophy barely earned a glance. Dad worked long hours at his accounting firm and often traveled for business. When he was home, he tried to buffer Mom's criticism, but he was no match for her iron will. Your mother just wants what's best for you, Morgan, he'd say with a tired smile. But what she thought was best for me was becoming a carbon copy of Vanessa. By high school, I'd given up trying to compete. Instead, I focused on finding my own path. I discovered photography, capturing moments of authentic beauty rather than manufactured perfection. I volunteered at the local animal shelter, finding comfort in the unconditional affection of abandoned dogs and cats. Through these outlets, I started building an identity separate from the comparative shadow of my sister. Then I met David during my sophomore year of college. He was studying engineering on an ROTC scholarship, with plans to join the Army after graduation. David saw me for who I really was. He loved my candid photographs, laughed at my dorky jokes, and never once compared me to anyone else. For the first time, I felt truly valued. When I told my parents about our engagement at 22, my mother's reaction was predictably cold. You're throwing away your future for a military boy? What about graduate school? She couldn't understand that I'd found something more valuable than the prestige she craved. David's family welcomed me with open arms, Sunday dinners full of laughter and genuine conversation. We married despite my mother's disapproval. She attended the wedding with a tight smile, criticizing everything from the modest venue to my simple dress. Dad slipped me an envelope with a check, whispering, "I'm proud of you, kiddo," when Mom wasn't looking. Tyler came along a year later, a perfect baby boy with David's curly hair and my green eyes. Even Barbara seemed to soften around him, though she couldn't resist suggestions about his care. "You're holding him too much, Morgan. You'll spoil him." Or, "That pediatrician doesn't seem very experienced. You should see Dr. Roberts instead." For 7 years, we made it work. David deployed twice, and during those long months, I sometimes relied on my parents for help with Tyler. Each time, it came with strings attached and streams of criticism about my parenting, my career choices as a part-time photographer, and my cluttered apartment. Then came the day that shattered our world. 2 officers at my door, solemn faces, a folded flag. David wouldn't be coming home from Afghanistan. Just like that, I was a 29-year-old widow with a 5-year-old son who couldn't understand why Daddy wasn't answering his video calls anymore. Grief consumed me, but Tyler needed stability. I moved us to a smaller apartment, took a steady job as a school administrative assistant, and learned to be both mother and father to my bewildered little boy. David's life insurance and military benefits kept us afloat financially, but emotionally, we were drowning. My mother's response to our tragedy was to intensify her control. "You should move back home, Morgan. You can't raise a boy alone." When I refused, she found other ways to undermine me. She'd buy Tyler expensive gifts I couldn't afford, then remind him, "Mommy can't give you these things, but Grandma can." She'd schedule activities during my limited time with him, then make me the villain when I objected. Meanwhile, Vanessa's life continued its picture-perfect trajectory. She married a successful dentist, had twin girls, and lived in a house that belonged in a magazine. Every family gathering became an opportunity for Barbara to highlight the contrast between our lives. Vanessa's girls are already reading at a third-grade level. Is Tyler still struggling with math? Or look at this beautiful vacation photo from their trip to Europe. When was the last time you took Tyler anywhere special, Morgan? Still, I maintained the relationship for Tyler's sake. He loved his cousins, and occasionally, when my mother wasn't actively criticizing me, we had moments that almost felt like family. Dad continued to be my quiet ally, slipping me encouraging notes or calling just to check in when Mom wasn't around. The years passed in this uneasy balance. Tyler grew from a grief-stricken 5-year-old into a thoughtful, resilient 12-year-old with his father's kind heart and determined spirit. We developed our own traditions and support systems. My coworkers became friends who understood my single mom struggles. David's parents, though living in Arizona, maintained a loving long-distance relationship with their grandson through weekly video calls and summer visits. Gradually, Tyler and I built a new normal. The raw wound of David's absence slowly transformed into a tender scar. We still missed him terribly, but we could talk about him without breaking down, sharing memories and keeping his spirit alive in our small family of 2. In recent months, things had actually been looking up. I'd been promoted at work, giving us a bit more financial breathing room. Tyler had joined the school science club and found his passion for robotics. We'd even planned a special trip to Washington, D.C. for spring break, our first real vacation in years. What I didn't realize was that our fragile peace with my mother was about to be tested in ways I never imagined. And when the moment of truth arrived, I would finally have to decide, would I continue the cycle of seeking approval I'd never receive, or would I find the courage to protect what mattered most, even at the cost of family ties? It was an ordinary Saturday morning, the kind that promised nothing more eventful than laundry, grocery shopping, and maybe a movie night. Tyler bounded into the kitchen, vibrating with excitement about riding bikes with his friends. The weather was perfect, clear blue skies, and the first real warmth of spring after a long Connecticut winter. "Can I go to the bike trail with Jake and Marcus? Jake's dad is taking us." "They'll pick me up in 30 minutes, Tyler asked, already halfway through a bowl of cereal. I glanced up from my coffee and grocery list. "Helmet and phone?" I asked, our standard safety check. "Yes, and yes," he replied, rolling his eyes with the particular exasperation only preteens can perfect. "I'm not a little kid anymore, Mom." I smiled, ruffling his hair as he ducked away. "Humor your overprotective mother. Be back by 4, okay? We need to shop for your science project supplies." "Deal." He finished his breakfast in record time, then darted off to get ready, all gangly limbs and boundless energy. I watched him pedal away with his friends from our apartment window, waving when he looked back. It was the last moment of our old life, though I didn't know it then. The call came at 11:27. An unfamiliar number, a woman's voice asking if I was Tyler Williams' mother. The world narrowed to a pinpoint as she explained there had been an accident. A car had swerved onto the bike trail. Tyler was being transported to Hartford Memorial. Critical condition. I don't remember driving to the hospital. I must have locked the apartment, found my keys, navigated traffic. But my next clear memory is running through automatic doors into the emergency department, gasping Tyler's name to the receptionist. "He's already been taken to surgery," she told me gently. "Let me page someone to update you." The surgical liaison who met me had kind eyes above her mask. She guided me to a private consultation room and explained in careful terms that seemed to come from very far away. Tyler had suffered severe head trauma, a broken femur, broken ribs, and internal bleeding. The neurosurgeon was working to relieve pressure on his brain. The orthopedic team would address his other injuries once he was stabilized. It would be several hours before they knew more. "Is he going to die?" I asked, my voice not sounding like my own. She didn't offer false reassurance. "He's very seriously injured. The next 24 hours are critical. But he's young and was healthy before the accident." That's in his favor. She left me with paperwork to fill out, medical history questions swimming before my eyes. I called my father, barely coherent through my tears. He promised to come right away. Then I sat in the surgical waiting room, surrounded by other anxious families, and did the only thing I could do. I waited. Tyler was in surgery for 6 hours. 6 hours of pacing, crying silently, praying to a God I wasn't sure I still believed in after losing David. 6 hours of bargaining, promising anything if only my son would live. When the surgeon finally appeared, his face was grave. The operation had stopped the bleeding in Tyler's brain, but significant swelling remained. They'd placed him in a medically induced coma to give his brain time to heal. He was being transferred to the pediatric intensive care unit. I could see him soon, but I needed to prepare myself. There would be tubes, machines, bandages. He wouldn't look like the boy who had ridden away that morning. "The next 48 hours will tell us a lot," the doctor said. "I wish I could give you certainties, Ms. Williams, but head injuries are unpredictable. We just have to wait and see." My father arrived just as they were settling Tyler in the ICU. He wrapped his arms around me, and I broke down completely, sobbing against his shoulder like I hadn't done since I was a child. "It's okay, Morgan," he whispered. "You're not alone." When we were finally allowed in to see Tyler, the shock nearly brought me to my knees. My vibrant, energetic son lay motionless amid a tangle of tubes and wires. His head was partially shaved and bandaged. A ventilator breathed for him. Monitors beeped steadily, the only indication that he was still with us. His face, what I could see of it, was swollen and bruised beyond recognition. I approached his bedside cautiously, afraid to disturb any of the equipment keeping him alive. The nurse, Susan, gently guided me to the chair beside him. "You can touch his hand," she said. "Talk to him. Many coma patients can hear even if they can't respond." So I took his small hand in mine, careful of the foreline, and began to talk. I told him about the robot kit waiting for him at home. I reminisced about the Halloween when he insisted on being an engineer astronaut like his dad wanted to be. I promised him trips to every science museum in the country once he recovered. I kept talking even when my throat was raw, afraid that if I stopped, some tenuous connection between us might be lost. Dad stayed until evening, then reluctantly left to update my mother, who hadn't bothered to come. "She's organizing some church function," he explained apologetically. "She sends her prayers." I nodded, too exhausted to feel the hurt that would come later. That first night established the pattern of the next 3 days. I refused to leave Tyler's side except for the briefest bathroom breaks. The ICU staff brought me blankets for the reclining chair, offered to arrange cot in the family room, but I couldn't bear to be away from him. Every beep of the monitors, every slight change in his condition sent my heart racing. What if he woke up confused and afraid without me there? What if he took a turn for the worse and I wasn't by his side? The doctors made their rounds, adjusting medications, checking reflexes, explaining test results in terms I struggled to comprehend through my fog of fear and exhaustion. The nurses became my lifeline, explaining what the doctors had said in simpler terms, showing me how to interpret the monitors, bringing me coffee and occasionally gentle pressure to eat something. Jake's parents came, bringing my laptop and some clothes from my apartment. Jake himself stood in the doorway, pale and shaken, unable to look directly at Tyler. "It's not your fault," I told him, though neither of us believed it yet. My coworkers organized a meal train, dropping off containers of food I barely touched. Tyler's science teacher brought a card signed by his entire class. David's parents called from Arizona, offering to fly out immediately. I asked them to wait until we had more news, not wanting them to face the same agonizing uncertainty I was living through. As the second day bled into the third, tiny hopeful signs emerged. Tyler's intracranial pressure readings stabilized. His oxygen levels improved. The doctor cautiously decreased his sedation, watching for signs of consciousness. But still, my son didn't wake up. By the third afternoon, 72 hours after the accident, I was operating on pure adrenaline and fear. I hadn't properly slept, had barely eaten, and had cried until it felt like there couldn't possibly be any tears left. Susan, now on her second shift with us, gently suggested I at least go to the family shower room to freshen up. 20 minutes, Morgan, she insisted kindly. I'll stay right with him. If anything changes, anything at all, I'll come get you immediately. I reluctantly agreed, gathering the clean clothes my coworker had brought. It was as I was standing to leave that my phone rang. My mother's name appeared on the screen. After 3 days of silence, she was finally calling. Relief washed over me. Maybe she was coming to help after all. Maybe she'd finally realized the severity of the situation. I had no way of knowing that this call would be the breaking point in a lifetime of broken expectations. I answered the phone with a surge of gratitude, stepping just outside Tyler's room to avoid disturbing him. Mom, thank you for calling. It's been so hard. Morgan. My mother's voice had that crisp, efficient tone she used when delegating tasks. I'm finalizing the arrangements for Vanessa's birthday dinner tomorrow. I need you to come over early to help prepare. Around 2 should work. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. Surely she couldn't be talking about a birthday party when her grandson was lying unconscious in intensive care. Mom, I can't leave the hospital. Tyler is still in critical condition. I spoke slowly, thinking perhaps she didn't understand the gravity of the situation. He hasn't woken up yet. I understand that, Morgan, she replied with a hint of impatience. But the doctors and nurses are taking care of him. There's nothing you can do by just sitting there, and this is important to your sister. Vanessa has been planning this dinner for months. The hallway seemed to tilt slightly as the full impact of her words hit me. 3 days of terror and exhaustion had worn my defenses thin, and I couldn't muster my usual placating response. My son might be dying, I said, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. Tyler, your grandson. He was hit by a car. He has brain swelling and internal injuries. I'm not leaving him to arrange finger sandwiches for Vanessa. There's no need to be dramatic, my mother sniffed. Tyler is getting the best medical care, and your constant hovering isn't going to change his condition. Family obligations don't disappear just because you're facing challenges. Challenges? I repeated incredulously. This isn't a flat tire or a broken dishwasher, Mom. My son is fighting for his life. And he will continue to do so whether you're sitting in that depressing hospital or not, she countered. Meanwhile, your sister will be devastated if you miss her birthday. You know how sensitive she is. The familiar guilt tactics washed over me. All my life, I'd been conditioned to put Vanessa's feelings above my own, to make allowances for her sensitivity, while my own pain was dismissed as overreaction. But this wasn't about me anymore. This was about Tyler. I'm sorry Vanessa will be disappointed, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. But I need to be here for my son. Morgan Williams. My mother's voice took on the steely tone that had intimidated me since childhood. After everything your father and I have done for you, especially since David died, this is how you repay us? Do you know how it will look if you're not there? What will I tell our friends from church? A nurse passed by, giving me a concerned glance. I realized I was trembling, my free hand clenched into a fist at my side. The mention of David, used as a manipulation tactic, ignited something inside me that 3 days of fear had compressed into a diamond-hard resolve. What exactly have you done for me since David died, Mom? I asked quietly. Criticized my parenting? Undermined my decisions? Used your financial advantages to make Tyler feel the lack in our life? Tell me, what support have you actually provided that didn't come with strings attached? How dare you, she gasped. We've given you money when you needed it. We've included you in family gatherings despite your constant attitude. We've maintained our relationship with Tyler even though you moved him across town away from us. Each accusation landed like a physical blow, but instead of cowering as I normally would, I found myself standing straighter. I moved across town because I found an apartment I could afford near a good school. I've never had an attitude about family gatherings. I've simply asked that you respect my work schedule and Tyler's activities. And yes, you've given us money occasionally, always with the reminder of how desperately we need it and how fortunate we are to have your charity. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she huffed. You twist everything into some sort of attack. This kind of victim mentality isn't healthy for Tyler, you know. Look where your independence has gotten you now. The implication that Tyler's accident was somehow a consequence of my inadequate parenting sent ice through my veins. For a moment, I couldn't speak, her words feeding the guilt that had been my constant companion since the accident. If I'd forbidden him from riding on that trail, if I'd insisted on driving him myself, if I'd been a better mother. Morgan, my mother continued, sensing weakness, be reasonable. The party starts at 6. You can spend the morning at the hospital, help with preparations, attend the dinner, and be back before Tyler would even know you were gone. This stubborn streak of yours has always been your downfall. I glanced back through the window of Tyler's room. Susan was adjusting his blanket with motherly care. Beyond her, my son lay still, fighting a battle I couldn't join. The only thing I could do was be there when, if he opened his eyes. No, I said simply. Excuse me. I said no, Mom. I will not leave my son alone in the hospital to attend a birthday party. Not even for Vanessa. Not even for you. Don't take that tone with me, young lady, she snapped. I am still your mother, and you will show me respect. Respect goes both ways, I replied, surprising myself with my calm. And right now, you're showing zero respect for what Tyler and I are going through. I see. Her voice turned cold. Well, let me be very clear, Morgan. If you choose not to fulfill your family obligations tomorrow, there will be consequences. Your father and I have supported you financially for years. The trust fund for Tyler's education, the money we set aside for emergencies, all of that can be reconsidered. I had expected many responses, but this naked threat stunned me. Are you seriously threatening to cut off your own grandson because I won't attend a birthday party while he's in intensive care? I'm simply pointing out that family loyalty is a two-way street. If you don't come, I'll cut you off. It's your choice. In that moment, something broke inside me. Not my spirit, but the chains of obligation and guilt that had bound me to this toxic relationship for 35 years. With crystal clarity, I saw the pattern that had defined my entire life with my mother: conditional love, emotional manipulation, and the constant threat of withdrawal if I didn't comply with her demands. You're right, Mom. It is my choice. My voice was steady, almost serene. And I choose my son. Goodbye. I ended the call and stood motionless in the sterile hospital hallway. For the first time in days, tears weren't threatening to overwhelm me. Instead, a strange calm had settled over me. I opened my contacts, found my mother's entry, and after only a moment's hesitation, deleted it from my phone. As I re-entered Tyler's room, Susan looked up with concern. Everything okay, hon? No, I said honestly. But I think maybe, someday, it will be. After my shower, I returned to my post beside Tyler's bed with a strange mixture of liberation and dread churning inside me. The immediate aftermath of cutting ties with my mother left me almost lightheaded, as if I'd put down a burden I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand straight. But as the hours ticked by, doubt crept in. The beeping monitors and hiss of Tyler's ventilator created a rhythmic backdrop to my spiraling thoughts. Had I overreacted? Would my impulsive decision hurt Tyler in the long run? The trust fund my parents had established for his college education wasn't enormous, but it represented security I couldn't provide on my own. And what about our tenuous family connections? Despite everything, Tyler loved his grandparents in the uncomplicated way children do. A memory surfaced unbidden. Tyler at 7, returning from a day with my parents while I worked overtime. His small face serious as he asked, "Mommy, Grandma says we're poor. Are we poor?" I'd been folding laundry, and the basket had slipped from my hands, scattering clean clothes across our small living room floor. "No, sweetie," I'd told him, kneeling to his level. "We have everything we need. We have our apartment, food, your school, and most importantly, we have each other." He'd nodded, but added, "Grandma says if you'd married someone with a real job instead of a soldier, we'd have a big house like Aunt Vanessa." The memory still stung, not just for the casual cruelty of disparaging David's military service, but for the confusion it had caused Tyler. I'd spent that evening reassuring him that his father was a hero, that our life was valuable exactly as it was. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and over the years, similar comments had watered it. Susan returned from her break, checking Tyler's vitals and recording them in her chart. "His numbers are looking better," she observed. "Blood pressure's stabilizing nicely. Is that a good sign?" "For waking up, I mean." I asked the same question I'd been asking for days. "It's definitely not a bad sign," she replied with the careful optimism I'd come to appreciate. "His body is healing. The brain takes its own time, but everything I'm seeing suggests he's moving in the right direction." After she left, I took Tyler's hand again. "I don't know if I did the right thing, buddy," I whispered to him. "But I couldn't leave you. Not for anything or anyone." The day stretched on, punctuated by medical checks, quiet conversations with nurses, and the delivery of another meal I couldn't bring myself to eat. My father called in the afternoon, his voice hesitant. "Your mother told me what happened," he began. "Did she tell you she threatened to cut off Tyler's college fund if I didn't attend Vanessa's birthday party?" I asked. A heavy sigh. "She didn't phrase it quite that way to me. She said you were being unreasonable and disrespectful." "Dad, I've been sitting in this hospital for 3 days straight. Tyler hasn't opened his eyes once. The doctors still can't tell me if he'll have brain damage if he wakes up. And Mom's big concern is that I helped decorate for Vanessa's party." "Your mother doesn't deal well with situations she can't control," he said quietly. "This scares her, Morgan. You know how she is." "That's not an excuse," I replied, too tired for anger. "Has she even asked how Tyler is doing?" His silence was answer enough. "I thought so," I said. "Look, Dad, I love you and I know you're caught in the middle. But I can't do this anymore. Not while Tyler needs me to be completely present for him." "I understand," he said, and I thought maybe he actually did. "I'll check on you tomorrow." After we hung up, my mind drifted to earlier conflicts with my mother, searching for patterns I'd been too close to see. There was my high school graduation when she'd criticized the dress I'd saved up to buy because it wasn't the one she would have chosen. My college scholarship, diminished because community college doesn't really count. My wedding, which she'd attended with visible displeasure, later telling relatives that she'd tried to talk sense into me about marrying so young. Then there was the aftermath of David's death. She'd arrived at my apartment the day after the funeral, armed with real estate listings in their neighborhood. "You can't possibly stay here now," she declared, as if the decision had already been made. When I'd explained that Tyler needed stability, that uprooting him from his school and friends would only add to his trauma, she'd accused me of being stubborn and ungrateful. The pattern was always the same. My choices were wrong because they weren't her choices. My priorities were misguided because they differed from hers. My life was inadequate because it didn't match her vision for me. A hospital chaplain stopped by in the early evening, offering spiritual support. I wasn't particularly religious, but something about his gentle presence broke through my isolation. "I just cut ties with my mother," I found myself telling him. In the middle of all this, with my son so sick, I deleted her number from my phone. Instead of the judgment I half expected, he nodded thoughtfully. "Crisis has a way of clarifying what's truly important," he said. "And sometimes, it gives us the courage to make difficult decisions we've been avoiding." But what if I'm punishing Tyler for my issues with my mother? The college fund, the family connections. "May I offer a perspective?" he asked, and when I nodded, continued, "From what you've told me, your mother was using financial support as a tool of control. That's not a gift, it's a transaction. And transactions always come with terms and conditions." His words resonated with something deep inside me. All these years, I'd been accepting my mother's help while ignoring the invisible strings attached to every dollar, every interaction. As for family connections, he went on, "Healthy relationships build us up. They don't tear us down." What lesson would your son learn if he saw you abandon him in his time of greatest need in order to please someone who shows so little regard for either of you? Put that way, the answer seemed clear. Yet as night fell and the hospital quieted, doubt returned. The nurse had convinced me to try sleeping in the family room's proper bed for a few hours while she watched over Tyler. Lying in the unfamiliar room, staring at the ceiling, I replayed every word of the conversation with my mother. Had I been too harsh? Should I have simply explained again how serious Tyler's condition was? But I had explained, I reminded myself. I'd been explaining my needs and boundaries to my mother my entire life, and she had consistently disregarded them. Still, the prospect of being truly cut off from my family sent waves of anxiety through me. The modest inheritance I'd someday receive from my parents represented security I couldn't provide on my own. The family home where I'd grown up, despite the complicated emotions attached to it, was still part of Tyler's heritage. Was I throwing away his birthright because of my own wounded pride? No, I decided as exhaustion finally pulled me toward sleep. This wasn't about pride. It was about breaking a cycle of emotional manipulation that would otherwise eventually ensnare Tyler too. If my son was going to heal and thrive, he needed a mother who modeled self-respect and healthy boundaries. Tomorrow would be Vanessa's birthday, and for the first time in my life, I wouldn't be there arranging flowers, addressing place cards, or deflecting my mother's criticisms. Whatever consequences came from that decision, I would face them for Tyler's sake. And maybe, just maybe, for my own. I woke from fitful sleep to the gentle nudge of the day nurse, Kelly. "Morgan," she said softly, "Dr. Patel wants to speak with you about Tyler's latest scans." Instantly alert, I checked my phone. 8:17 in the morning. I'd slept longer than intended. "Is everything okay?" "He's stable," she assured me. "The doctor just wants to update you on the overnight tests." I splashed water on my face, ran a brush through my tangled hair, and hurried back to Tyler's room. Dr. Patel, the neurologist who'd been overseeing Tyler's care, was reviewing charts at the nurse's station. "Ms. Williams," he greeted me with his quiet confidence. "We've got the results from Tyler's overnight EEG and the follow-up CT scan." My heart hammered as he continued, "The good news is that the intracranial pressure has continued to decrease. The swelling is resolving more quickly than we anticipated." "And the bad news?" I asked, bracing myself. "Not bad news, exactly, but reason for continued caution. We're not seeing the level of brain activity we'd hoped for at this stage. It doesn't mean he won't wake up, but it suggests we need to be patient." Patient. The word echoed hollowly. How much more patient could I be? What's the next step? "We're going to start gradually reducing the sedation today. If all goes well, we might be able to attempt removing the ventilator tomorrow or the day after." As we discussed details, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Vanessa. "Mom says you're not coming today. I know Tyler is sick, but it's just a few hours. You could at least send a gift." I stared at the screen, momentarily speechless. Just sick. As if my son had a cold or a sprained ankle. I silenced the phone without responding and refocused on Dr. Patel's instructions. Throughout the morning, the texts kept coming. "Aunt Judith, your mother is beside herself. Family should come first. Cousin Rachel, everyone's asking where you are. So awkward. Uncle Steve. Your sister only turns 30 once, kiddo. Each message twisted the knife, not because they made me doubt my decision, but because they revealed how completely my family misunderstood or minimized what Tyler and I were going through. Not one of them asked how Tyler was doing. Not one expressed genuine concern for his condition or offered support. Around noon, as I was helping the physical therapist move Tyler's limbs to prevent muscle atrophy, my phone rang. My father. How is he today? He asked, background noise suggesting he was in the car. About the same, I replied. They're reducing his sedation gradually. We're hoping for signs of consciousness soon. That's good, he said, sounding distracted. Listen, Morgan, I'm driving your mother and Vanessa to pick up the cake. Is there any chance you've reconsidered? Even for an hour? Something in me snapped. No, Dad. I haven't reconsidered. I'm not leaving my critically injured child alone in the hospital to celebrate Vanessa's birthday. The fact that anyone in this family thinks I should is absolutely insane. You don't need to take that tone, he said, his voice hardening. Your mother is very upset. My mother is always right now. He needed me present and clear-headed. The afternoon crawled by as the medical team gradually adjusted Tyler's medications. I watched obsessively for any sign of response, a twitch of fingers, a flicker of eyelids, anything to indicate he was coming back to me. But hour after hour, he remained still. Dr. Patel returned in the late afternoon, examining Tyler thoroughly and reviewing the latest vital signs. His body is responding well to the medication changes, he noted. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Each patient follows their own timeline. As he was leaving, he paused in the doorway. Ms. Williams, forgive me if this is overstepping, but Nurse Susan mentioned you've been here continuously for 4 days now. I can't leave him, I said simply. I understand that instinct completely, he replied. But as a doctor, I need to point out that exhaustion compromises your immune system and cognitive function. You won't be able to support Tyler effectively if you collapse. What would you do? I asked. If it was your child? His professional demeanor softened slightly. I'd probably do exactly what you're doing, he admitted. But I'd also recognize that taking care of myself is part of taking care of my child. Short breaks, proper meals, even brief walks outside the hospital, these things aren't abandonment. They're necessary maintenance. His words reminded me of airline safety instructions. Put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. I'll try, I promised, though the thought of leaving Tyler still filled me with anxiety. There's something else, he added hesitantly. Family conflicts often intensify during medical crises. Whatever's happening with your relatives, don't let it consume the emotional energy Tyler needs from you right now. I nodded, struck by his insight. Thank you. After he left, I sat with his advice, recognizing its wisdom. The conflict with my mother had been building for decades. Tyler's accident hadn't created it, merely brought it to a breaking point. And now I needed to set it aside to focus completely on my son's recovery. Just as I was contemplating a quick trip to the cafeteria for real food, my phone, which I'd turned back on, rang again. Vanessa's husband, Richard. Morgan, he began without preamble, this has gone far enough. Your sister is in tears. Your mother is having one of her migraines. You've ruined the entire day. Richard, my son is in a coma, I said, keeping my voice low despite the anger bubbling up. I'm sorry Vanessa is upset, but my priority has to be Tyler right now. Look, no one's saying Tyler isn't important, he replied with the condescending tone he typically reserved for discussions about my financial situation. But your attitude is causing real distress to your family. Your mother says this is typical behavior from you, always putting your own drama above everyone else's needs. Something inside me, some final thread of restraint, broke. My drama? My 12-year-old son was hit by a car, Richard. He has a traumatic brain injury. He hasn't opened his eyes in 4 days. I haven't left this hospital since the ambulance brought him here. I've barely slept. I'm terrified he might die or wake up with permanent damage. And you're calling that drama? That's not what I meant, he backpedaled. Of course Tyler's accident is serious. But you know how important these family gatherings are to Barbara. Surely you could have compromised somehow. Compromise? I repeated incredulously. What exactly would that look like, Richard? Should I leave my unconscious son alone so I can help arrange Vanessa's birthday flowers? Should I abandon him when he might wake up confused and frightened, just to keep my mother happy? Tell me, what compromise would you suggest if it was one of your children lying here? His silence told me everything I needed to know. That's what I thought, I continued, my voice steadier now. Let me be absolutely clear. I love my sister. I'm sorry she's upset on her birthday. But I will not leave my son's bedside for a party, and the fact that anyone in this family expects me to do so tells me everything I need to know about where Tyler and I stand in the hierarchy of importance. You're being melodramatic, he tried again, but with less conviction. No, Richard, for the first time in my life, I'm seeing things exactly as they are. Please don't call again unless it's to ask how Tyler is doing or to offer actual support. I ended the call and turned to find Kelly standing in the doorway with wide eyes. I'm sorry, I said, embarrassed by my outburst. Family stuff. Never apologize for standing up for your child, she replied firmly. In my 15 years of nursing, I've seen all kinds of family dynamics play out in these rooms. Trust me, you're doing the right thing being here. Her validation meant more than she could know. Thank you. Now, she continued briskly, I'm ordering you to go to the cafeteria and eat an actual meal while I sit with Tyler. Doctor's orders. 20 minutes, minimum. For the first time in days, I felt the ghost of a smile cross my face. Yes, ma'am. The hospital cafeteria was relatively quiet at 5 in the afternoon, between the lunch and dinner rushes. I selected a sandwich and soup, then sat by a window overlooking the parking lot. Outside, life continued normally. People came and went, completely unaware that my entire world was contained in a small ICU room 4 floors above. As I ate mechanically, I checked the time. 5:20. Vanessa's party would be starting soon. For a moment, I pictured the familiar scene. My mother's immaculate dining room, the table set with her best china, Vanessa holding court as the guest of honor. For the first time in my adult life, I wouldn't be there in my assigned supporting role. Strange as it seemed, amid all the fear and exhaustion, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace about that decision. The oxygen mask metaphor came back to me. By refusing to abandon Tyler, I wasn't just caring for him. I was finally putting on my own mask first after years of oxygen deprivation. I had just finished eating when my phone rang. Kelly's number. My heart lurched as I answered. Morgan, she said urgently, you need to come back right now. Tyler's monitors are showing changes. I was already running for the elevator. Changes? Is he okay? Just get here, she replied. Hurry. I raced back to Tyler's room, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The elevator seemed agonizingly slow, stopping at every floor despite my frantic button pressing. When it finally reached the pediatric ICU, I sprinted down the hallway, dodging a meal cart and nearly colliding with an orderly. Outside Tyler's room, I paused for a split second, terrified of what I might find inside. Had he taken a turn for the worse? Was this the moment I'd been dreading, when the doctors would tell me they'd done everything they could? Drawing a deep breath, I pushed open the door. Kelly was bent over Tyler's bed, adjusting something on one of the monitors. She looked up as I entered, her expression unreadable. His EEG patterns changed, she said. I called Dr. Patel. He's on his way. What does that mean? I asked, moving to Tyler's side. He looked the same, still and pale among the tubes and wires. Is it bad? Not necessarily, she replied cautiously. There's increased brain activity. It could be a positive sign. I took Tyler's hand, careful of the 4 line. Tyler? Sweetheart, it's Mom. I'm here. My voice broke slightly. If you can hear me, try to squeeze my hand. Nothing. Just the steady beep of the heart monitor, the rhythmic whoosh of the ventilator. Dr. Patel arrived minutes later, reviewing the EEG readouts with focused intensity. "This is interesting," he murmured, mostly to himself. He performed a quick neurological exam, checking Tyler's pupil response, testing basic reflexes. "Ms. Williams," he said finally, "there are definite changes in Tyler's brain activity patterns. We're seeing waves consistent with lighter states of unconsciousness." "He's waking up?" I hardly dared to hope. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," he cautioned. "But this is a positive development. I'm going to order a reduction in his sedation. If he continues to progress, we might see more responsiveness in the coming hours." "Hours?" I repeated, clinging to the word. "Potentially," he nodded. "But I want to emphasize that emerging from a coma isn't like waking up from sleep. It's usually a gradual process with ups and downs. Try to manage your expectations." After he left, I resumed my vigil beside Tyler, talking to him continuously, telling him about the robot kits waiting at home, promising trips to the science museum, anything to give him a connection to follow back to consciousness. The light outside faded as evening settled in. Vanessa's party would be in full swing now, I thought absently. The gifts would have been opened, the cake cut. For the first time in my life, I'd chosen my own path instead of the one my mother had prescribed, and despite everything, it felt right. Around 8:30, as Kelly was performing her hourly check of Tyler's vitals, I noticed a slight movement. His fingers twitched against mine. "Did you see that?" I gasped. Kelly immediately checked the monitors. "His heart rate's up slightly," she noted. "Tyler? Can you hear me?" Another twitch, this time accompanied by a slight furrow of his brow. I leaned closer, hardly daring to breathe. "Tyler? Sweetheart, it's Mom. You're in the hospital. You're safe." His eyelids fluttered. Just a quick movement, but unmistakable. "I'll get Dr. Patel," Kelly said, already reaching for the phone. The next 45 minutes passed in a blur of medical personnel, tests, and cautious optimism. Tyler's eyes fluttered several more times. His hand definitely squeezed mine, weakly but purposefully. The ventilator, which had been breathing for him since the accident, registered his attempts to initiate breaths on his own. "These are all excellent signs," Dr. Patel assured me. "He's fighting his way back." By 10 o'clock, the room had quieted again. The night shift nurse, Marcus, had taken over from Kelly, continuing the reduced sedation protocol Dr. Patel had ordered. I sat holding Tyler's hand, afraid to look away for even a moment lest I miss some new sign of awakening. It happened during a moment of perfect stillness. One moment Tyler was motionless, the next his eyes opened. Not a flutter, not a momentary glimpse, but a sustained gaze, unfocused at first, then gradually settling on my face. "Tyler," I whispered, tears immediately spilling down my cheeks. "Can you hear me?" He blinked slowly, confusion evident in his expression. The ventilator tube prevented him from speaking, but his eyes tracked my movement as I leaned closer. "You're in the hospital, sweetheart. There was an accident, but you're going to be okay. I'm right here." His hand tightened weakly around mine. Marcus noticed the change and immediately came to check the monitors. "Well, hello there, young man," he said with a warm smile. "You've been keeping us on our toes." The next several minutes were a flurry of activity as Marcus paged Dr. Patel and performed a quick neurological assessment. Tyler remained awake, his eyes sometimes drifting closed with exhaustion, but reopening when we spoke to him. He seemed to understand simple instructions, squeezing hands on command and tracking movements with his eyes. "Don't try to talk with the tube in," Marcus explained to Tyler. "The doctor will evaluate whether we can remove it soon. Just rest and let your body heal." When Dr. Patel arrived, his face broke into the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. "This is excellent," he said after examining Tyler. "He's showing good neurological responses." If he continues to improve overnight, we can consider extubation tomorrow morning. After the doctor left, I sat beside Tyler, overwhelmed with relief. Mom, don't cry, Tyler mouthed around the ventilator tube, his eyes concerned despite his own condition. I laughed through my tears, stroking his hair gently. These are happy tears, buddy. I'm just so glad to see those eyes open. He drifted in and out of consciousness over the next few hours, each awakening slightly longer and more alert than the last. During one lucid period, he mouthed a question I couldn't quite interpret. Grandma? Marcus suggested, more experienced at reading lips around ventilator tubes. Tyler nodded slightly, wincing at the movement. Grandma and Grandpa know you're here, I told him, sidestepping the full truth. Everyone's been very worried about you. He seemed satisfied with that answer, his eyes drifting closed again. I exchanged a glance with Marcus, who gave me an understanding nod. The full complexity of family dynamics could wait until Tyler was stronger. By morning, Tyler's improvement was remarkable. He was consistently awake for longer periods, responsive to questions, and showing good neurological function. Dr. Patel decided to remove the ventilator, a procedure that left Tyler with a sore throat but finally able to speak in a raspy whisper. Water was his first spoken request, followed by a weak but unmistakable hungry. Small victories that brought fresh tears to my eyes. The doctor cautioned that we still had a long road ahead. Tyler's broken bones would need time to heal, and we wouldn't know if there were any cognitive effects from the brain injury until he was further along in recovery. But for now, the simple fact of his awakening, his recognition, his basic needs, felt like miracles. I was helping Tyler sip water through a straw when the door to his room swung open without a knock. My mother strode in, followed closely by Vanessa. The sight of them froze me in place, the water cup suspended halfway to Tyler's lips. There you are, my mother said, as if I'd been deliberately hiding. We've been trying to reach you for hours. I set the cup down carefully, acutely aware of Tyler watching the interaction. I turned my phone off last night, I said quietly. Tyler woke up. My mother's gaze shifted to her grandson, softening slightly. Hello, Tyler. You gave us quite a scare. Then, to me in a lower voice, we need to talk. Outside. I'm not leaving him, I stated firmly. It's okay, Mom, Tyler whispered, his voice still raw from the ventilator. I'm okay. Reluctantly, I stepped just outside the door with my mother and sister, positioning myself so I could still see Tyler through the window. Your behavior yesterday was completely unacceptable, my mother began without preamble. Vanessa's birthday was ruined. Everyone was asking where you were. My son was in a coma, I replied, keeping my voice level with effort. And now he's awake, she countered. So, all that drama about not being able to leave his side was clearly excessive. You could have attended the party for an hour. The casual dismissal of Tyler's critical condition and my vigil beside him left me momentarily speechless. Vanessa stepped into the breach, her expression a practiced blend of concern and reproach. We understand you were worried, Morgan, but family obligations don't just disappear because of a crisis. We rescheduled the photographer because you weren't there for the family portrait. A photographer, I repeated slowly, the absurdity of their priorities suddenly crystal clear. My son nearly died, and you're upset about a photo opportunity. Don't be so melodramatic, my mother scoffed. The doctors were taking care of him. Your presence wasn't medically necessary. Something inside me shifted, like tectonic plates finding a new arrangement. The old familiar guilt and need for approval were still there, but they'd been displaced by something stronger, the fierce, protective love of a mother who had nearly lost her child. Let me be very clear, I said, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. Tyler woke up last night, not because of medical intervention, but because he was fighting his way back. He opened his eyes and saw me, his mother, beside him where I had promised to be. Not at a birthday party, not posing for photos, but right where he needed me. Morgan Williams, Don't you take that tone with me, my mother warned, drawing herself up to her full height. After everything your father and I have done for you and Tyler, this is the gratitude we get? The disrespect. What exactly have you done, Mom? I asked, surprising myself with my calm. You've criticized my parenting, undermined my decisions, used money as a weapon, and now, when my child is seriously injured, your biggest concern is that I missed a party. So please, tell me what gratitude you feel entitled to. Vanessa gasped at my unprecedented defiance. My mother's face hardened into the expression I'd feared my entire life, the look that preceded punishment, withdrawal, cold silence. I see you've made your choice, she said icily. Don't expect any further financial support from us. The trust fund, the inheritance, all of it will be reconsidered. I expected nothing less, I replied, the words bringing a strange liberation. Now, if you want to see Tyler, you can come in one at a time, be positive and supportive, and stay no more than 5 minutes. He's still recovering and doesn't need stress. You can't dictate the terms of our relationship with our grandson, my mother sputtered. Actually, I can and I will. I'm his mother and his legal guardian. If you can't respect these boundaries, I'll ask security to escort you out. For a moment, I thought she might actually strike me. Instead, she turned on her heel and stalked toward Tyler's room. I quickly stepped in front of her. One more thing. He doesn't know about our conflict, and this isn't the time to burden him with it. If you say one word to upset him, you will never see him again. The absolute certainty in my voice must have convinced her I meant it. She nodded stiffly and entered the room, transforming instantly into the doting grandmother role she played so well for audiences. I stayed by the door, watching like a hawk as she spoke softly to Tyler, patting his hand and telling him how worried we all had been. Tyler, still weak and groggy, seemed confused by her presence, but managed small responses to her questions. After exactly 5 minutes, I stepped forward. Tyler needs to rest now. My mother straightened, the pleasant mask slipping slightly. I've hardly had any time with him. 5 minutes, as we agreed, I replied firmly. You can visit again tomorrow if Tyler feels up to it. She gathered her designer purse, leaning down to kiss Tyler's forehead. Grandma will be back soon, sweetheart. You focus on getting better. After she stepped out, Vanessa took her turn, clearly uncomfortable with the tension, but making an effort to be cheerful for Tyler's benefit. She showed him pictures of his cousins on her phone and promised to bring them to visit when he was stronger. When both had left, I returned to Tyler's side, emotionally drained but resolute. You okay, buddy? He nodded slightly, then whispered, Were you fighting? About the party. I considered how to answer, balancing honesty with his fragile condition. We had a disagreement, I admitted. Grandma wanted me to go to Aunt Vanessa's birthday yesterday, but I needed to be here with you. His eyes, so much like his father's, studied my face. You stayed with me the whole time? Every minute, I promised. And I'm not going anywhere. He seemed to process this, then whispered something so quietly I had to lean closer to hear. You were right to stay with me. In that moment, as tears blurred my vision, I knew with absolute certainty that I had made the right choice. Not just for Tyler, but for both of us. The weeks following Tyler's awakening unfolded in a blur of medical assessments, physical therapy sessions, and small but significant victories. The first time he sat up without assistance. The day he took 3 steps with a walker. The morning he correctly solved a simple math problem, proving his cognitive functions were returning. Dr. Patel continued to caution that recovery from traumatic brain injury was rarely a straight line, and indeed, we faced setbacks along with progress. Tyler struggled with short-term memory issues, tiring easily during cognitive tasks. Headaches plagued him, sometimes mild, sometimes debilitating. The broken femur required a second surgery when it wasn't healing properly. Through it all, we found strength I hadn't known we possessed. Tyler approached each challenge with determination that brought both pride and heartache. I get it from you, Mom, he told me once after a particularly difficult physical therapy session. Dad always said you were the strongest person he knew. Our support system expanded in unexpected ways. My coworkers organized a rotation to help with household chores. Jake's parents drove Tyler to appointments when I had to work. David's parents flew in from Arizona and stayed for 2 weeks. Their practical support and unconditional love a balm for both of us. Meanwhile, my relationship with my parents entered uncharted territory. True to her word, my mother formally revised their will and trust documents, removing Tyler and me as beneficiaries. My father called to tell me, his voice heavy with regret but ultimately loyal to his wife. She feels you've left her no choice, Morgan. I understand, Dad, I replied, surprising myself with how little the financial loss stung compared to the preceding emotional damage. But I hope you understand that I also had no choice. Vanessa's attitude shifted gradually from righteous indignation to cautious reconciliation attempts. She began sending Tyler small gifts, asking about his progress, even offering to help with transportation occasionally. I accepted these overtures for what they were, neither fully embracing nor rejecting the tentative olive branches. My mother's approach was more complex. She alternated between icy silence and occasional visits to Tyler that were all performance, no substance. She brought expensive presents I couldn't afford, reinforcing the disparity in our financial situations. She asked about his medical care with barely concealed criticism of my decisions. Each interaction left me emotionally depleted but increasingly certain of the boundaries I needed to maintain. 3 months after the accident, Tyler was finally cleared to return to school part-time. His homecoming teacher worked with us to create a modified schedule that accommodated his continuing recovery. His friends, awkward at first around his new limitations, gradually relaxed as Tyler's personality re-emerged through the trauma. The first time he laughed, really laughed, at some silly joke during a video game session with Jake, I had to excuse myself to cry in the bathroom, overwhelmed with gratitude for that simple, precious sound I'd feared I might never hear again. 6 months post-accident, we established a new normal. Tyler walked with only a slight limp that the physical therapist assured us would likely disappear with continued exercises. His academic performance had nearly returned to pre-accident levels, though he still required extra time for tests and assignments. The headaches came less frequently, manageable with medication when they did occur. Throughout this period of recovery, I maintained the boundaries I'd established with my family. My mother's letters, filled with thinly veiled guilt trips and passive-aggressive jabs, were returned unopened. My father's occasional visits were welcomed, but kept carefully separate from the toxic dynamic with my mother. The financial implications of our estrangement were significant but not insurmountable. I took on freelance photography work in addition to my school administration job, building a modest client base for family portraits and small events. We downsized to an even smaller apartment, cutting expenses wherever possible. The college fund we'd been counting on would need to be replaced with scholarships, loans, and my own savings, but we had time to figure it out. More importantly, I found myself breathing easier without the constant weight of seeking approval I'd never receive. The emotional energy previously consumed by managing my mother's expectations could now be directed toward Tyler's recovery and my own healing. 1 year after the accident, we celebrated Tyler's 13th birthday with a small gathering of the people who'd supported us through our darkest days. My coworkers brought a homemade cake. Jake's family arrived with thoughtfully chosen gifts within our new financial reality. David's parents called from Arizona, promising a special celebration during our planned visit that summer. Notably absent were my mother and Vanessa, though my father came briefly, bringing gifts from the family without specifying who had chosen or paid for them. After he left, Tyler asked the question I'd been expecting for months. "Mom, are we ever going to be close with Grandma again?" We sat on our small balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. I considered how to answer, balancing honesty with age-appropriate explanation. I don't know, buddy, I said finally. Sometimes relationships become unhealthy, even with people we love. Grandma and I have very different ideas about how family should treat each other. He nodded thoughtfully. She always made you sad. Even before my accident. This simple observation startled me. Children notice so much more than we give them credit for. Yes, she did. But I kept trying because I thought that's what families were supposed to do. But not anymore, he prompted. I've learned that real family supports you without conditions, I explained. They show up when you need them most. They respect your choices even when they disagree. And sometimes, the family we choose is more reliable than the family we're born into. He considered this, absently rubbing the scar on his arm from one of his surgeries. Like Jake's parents bringing me to therapy when you had to work? Or your friends from school bringing dinner every night that first month? Exactly like that, I smiled. Those actions show real love, not just words. Dad would be proud of you, Tyler said suddenly. For being brave and standing up for yourself. For taking care of me. The unexpected statement brought tears to my eyes. I think he'd be even more proud of you, Tyler. The way you fought to recover. How hard you've worked, how brave you've been through all of this. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Tyler spoke again. I don't need Grandma's money for college. I'm going to get scholarships. And maybe I can work while I study like Dad did. His resilience and determination never failed to amaze me. That's the plan, I agreed. And we have 5 years to figure it out. We'll make it work, just like we always do. As the sky darkened and stars began to appear, I reflected on how far we'd come from those terrifying days in the ICU. The path had not been easy, and we still faced challenges ahead. But we had found strength neither of us knew we possessed, built a support network based on genuine care rather than obligation, and learned that sometimes setting boundaries, even painful ones, was an act of self-preservation rather than selfishness. Tyler's accident had nearly broken me. My mother's ultimatum had forced me to choose between generational patterns of emotional manipulation and my own well-being. In choosing myself and my son, I had finally broken free from the chains of conditional love and approval-seeking that had defined my entire life. The trust fund was gone. The inheritance would never materialize. The family connections were strained or severed. But in their place, we had built something more valuable, authentic relationships, self-respect, and the knowledge that we could weather even the most devastating storms together. As Tyler dozed against my shoulder, exhausted from the day's celebration but content, I whispered the truth that had emerged from our ordeal. Sometimes the hardest choice is the right one, and the heaviest things to let go of are the ones weighing us down the most. Where would you draw the line between family obligation and self-preservation? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your mental health or your child's well-being? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Thank you for being part of this journey with me, and remember that sometimes the family we choose is the one that truly supports us through our darkest moments.